Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are back for a second week, Fitzy. We've got some big topics this week, or this video. There's a few injuries to a couple of players that I'm sure a lot of people have in, especially a rookie who's been doing quite well as of late, Fitzy. So we'll get straight into it. We'll talk about our teams. We'll start with you first.
I had a pretty ordinary round this week, to be honest, Gracie. I only scored, where's my mouse gone? 2,037, which is a bit better than I sort of thought I would. Sort of had panic stations with Lewis and Alice Yeoman. Cade Simpson was late withdrawal, so I had to trade Malcheski into Pittard. Who actually, 59 was a pretty good game. He had 5 clangers in the game and still got 60, so that's pretty good.
Yep.
I think for the long run, I talked him up last week, so I'm actually kind of happy to have him in there. But I had a bit of a muck up on the bench here because I figured, Gracie, I set 2 defensive emergencies thinking, well, if McIntosh does all right, I can just have Simpson and Malcheski's scores go out and those 2 scores come in, Brown, McIntosh, but didn't quite work out that way. So I was at the movies on Saturday trying to trade players and that didn't work out very well. But anyway, and the other muck up, I was deciding between Franklin and Goddard. I ended up going Buddy instead of Goddard, but I'll trade Goddard in this week anyway, which was sort of the plan to get one or the other. So not great, but I mean, Lewis out, Alice Yeoman out this week. If Simpson doesn't come back, I could be in a bit of trouble, but hopefully using some dual position links, I should be able to cover all the holes.
Yep.
But yeah, so overall rank went out to 4,900, but still pretty close.
Yep. No,
and you go.
Nice. Well, and the trusty Apple, who have just jumped on as our major sponsor.
I know. We've lost Arnott's and we've added Apple, so thanks.
Well, I can't eat Arnott's anymore, so
there
you go. Well, Fitzy, I had a little bit better week, 2,188. So
good score.
My 2 trades this week did very well. I bought in Sheila, he got 106, and I bought in Robbie Gray, who got 140. So I was pretty happy with that.
Good trades.
I've jumped up into the top 10,000, so I'm in the top 4%. Yes, welcome. I've joined the top 4%. So 8,995 was my rank. So did pretty well. I had Sloane, who got subbed off again. Is obviously a big issue, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But I had some good scores. You know, Missy Higgins turned up, Fitzy. So
102.
Yeah,
nice.
Nunes even decided to come to the party, and Ibbotson got 95. So those guys that I sort of went a bit cheaper on at the start of the year. Sort of.
They're all keepers now, as far as I'm concerned. All these guys are going to be keepers. It's not worth trading one of these guys to Simpson, who's probably going to score 15 more points than him at a maximum. So I think if you've got any of those guys, Lumumba's another one I'd probably be inclined to hang on to as well.
For the moment.
I think I think you're set there.
Then obviously you had Fife and all those guys. Cripps turned up again, Fitzy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was tossing up between putting Heaney, Miller, and Cracker on. And when I found out Heaney wasn't the sub, I put Heaney on, and unfortunately for the poor bloke, he's out for 6 weeks.
Yeah,
so,
it's your fault.
So I've got Miller and I had Cracker there, who both outscored him. So I would have got 2-2 if I'd have put either of those on.
What did Heaney got 41 from what? How many quarters did he play? 2.5?
2, I think.
Maybe not even that. So that's not a bad score then. It was about there and about.
And then, Dusty, 124. I watched the game. He actually had a pretty average game, but we'll talk about that later. So, But overall, it was pretty good, Fitzy, so I'm happy. This week's going to be absolute carnage because there's trades that I want to do that making it quite hard now with a couple of blokes out. So
I just closed Skype down. But this is where it gets a little bit tricky, Gracie, because you've got plans in place, especially leading up to the buys. And then when you get some long-term injuries, it can very easily throw it out. So we'll talk about some injured players shortly, but let's quickly run through each of the games, starting with your mob on Friday night.
My mob, they destroyed the Magpies.
It was such a satisfying win.
It was cold fires on Friday night. It was it was a bit of a surprise, Fitzy, to get out by about 40 points at quarter time or whatever it was.
Yeah, so pretty crazy.
But obviously we had big scorer. Mitch Duncan's had 2 massive weeks.
Yep.
Stevie J's back Fitzy.
And he's on my list to discuss
very,
after this.
Very cheap. So. Corey Enright, well, if you had him at the start of the year, a lot of people were saying, no, he's too old, he won't be fit. He's averaging like 93 or something.
Would you be bringing him in at this stage? Or
it's probably a bit late. He's probably going to be a bit too expensive for what he can do, because he's only going to average around that 90 mark. So if you started with him, well done to you. So a couple of the kids like Caddy and Thurlow and Gregson all did well. Fitzy, the big Blissarves, 107. For those people who have him, well done. He's just he's unstoppable at the moment. The big himself. So he's been a very, very good find for us. So
I watched the game, and he was starting in the middle. He was coming up, second man or third man over the top in the ruck contest. You look at his stats here. How many possessions is that, Gracie? 27, 15 contested, 6 hit-outs, and if a couple of those go to advantage, there's 10 and 15 points.
A couple of free kicks as well. So.
Exactly, and how many clearances? 5 clearances. So that's a bloody good effort. So you could argue this is like the mould of the new age player in a way. But the Geelong guys were all over Collingwood.
Yep.
It was a pretty sad sight for the Magpies. Only Scott Pendlebury turned up in Supercoach. He only just got there, so otherwise there wasn't much to see there. Swanee only got 70, which is disappointing. But I honestly think, my girlfriend's a Collingwood supporter, I honestly think that this is the form that they're going to start showing for the rest of the year when they're not playing Carlton, St Kilda, and all these teams that just aren't even going to be there in September, or October it is this year. So more importantly, Gracie, the Roos had a good win over the Tigers. I was too busy watching the start of Pitch Perfect to watch much of the game.
I watched the whole game of this. The first half was probably the worst game of football I've seen because there was just fumbles everywhere. I mean, it's probably to do with the pressure, but then the third quarter, it just opened up. They kicked, 8 goals to nothing or something like that. And Richmond just looked absolutely shithouse, to be honest.
It would have been a little bit dewy, I reckon, down in Hobart. It's always a bit...
No, I do see Anthony Miles got 149. I took him out of my draft league last week.
And just quietly, Shane Edwards, Gracie, I think that's about... How many tons has he got this year?
He's averaging over 100. So.
If you're looking for a point of difference to Dustin Martin, he might be worth a bit of a thought. There we go. 103, 100, 117, 86 and 134. So that's a very nice number.
But the teams he's played... I mean, I know he's
got to keep that in mind.
North and Geelong. He has... Geelong, he scored 86 and then, 134 on the weekend.
Yeah.
But, it's tough, but
it is tough. He's playing a bit of more of a wing role. I reckon last year was playing up forward. I think he was a sub a few times, so he's definitely playing the Supercoach friendly role. But I probably wouldn't move Hell on Earth to get on him.
No,
but I reckon with Dusty and all these guys down forward, you're probably better off sticking with them.
But Dusty, if we look at his, it doesn't have inside 50s there, does it?
No, it doesn't.
For his 30 odd touches he had only had 2 inside 50s or something like that. Yeah, Hardwick had a fair old crack at him in the press conference, and I could imagine that behind closed doors it would have been even worse. So
he sort of almost played. I suppose him and Miles played a bit of a lone hand in the midfield there. Marriage got another good score, 123.
Colchin is just butchering the ball at the moment.
He is.
His short kicks, he just
champion data, I think, are really what's the word? Restricting him a little bit because all he does is chip kicks, get the quick handball, so he'll get 3 touches in a row, but the ball doesn't go anywhere. So, and even McIntosh Grace now landed up with 47, but I think his break even's still relatively low, so you might be inclined to keep him for this week,
especially with a couple of injuries that we'll bring up soon.
Exactly. So. All right. And on North Melbourne side, as you mentioned, Higgins got 100, and who else?
Scott Thompson. I was happy with Thompson. He's in my draft.
Oh yeah, there you go. Ben Jacobs.
Zeeble. Well, a few people actually have Zeeble.
He's been scoring pretty consistently this year. Again, it's going to come down to there being so many good forward options this year that Zeeble and Edwards you probably wouldn't pick. But if this was last year, you'd probably jump on him as a point of
Harvey
difference.
got a big score. So.
Harvey did. That's his first good game of the year, so he'll drop a little bit in price. But watch his form because he could be one to get on for the second half of the season.
Move on to the game. I don't know how Saints won, but it was just astonishing. I watched this game as well, Fitzy, and as you could probably tell, I don't have much of a life on a Sunday except from watching football. But the Bulldogs were up by 55 points 5 minutes into the third quarter, and somehow the Saints come home, and it was just amazing. One man, Jack Billings, just dominated. David Armitage, mind you, I have him in my draft league. I picked him up because he was a free agent. He is almost worth jumping on, I think.
I'm not as confident with him, but I'd be watching him very closely up until the buy rounds because he's now about 600,000, so you've definitely missed the boat on him. But I don't know, there's a few guys every year that start really well. Monday's another one, then they sort of taper off as the season goes on. But
if he's still averaging 120 after the buys, I think you have to get him. I think as a sort of bit of point of difference, because a lot of people will be a bit hesitant to get him because of Saints won't win many games, but I mean he's had 45 disposals, kicked a goal, 16 contested possessions. He was just everywhere. Him and Billings were the main reason that they got back up.
Absolutely. So. In the highlights, it looked like Armitage brought his own footy. There was no one within 5 metres of him, but I think me personally, with guys like Rockcliffe and Sloane's going to be cheap in a month's time or so. I'm going to be targeting those guys. But if you wanted a real point of difference, I don't know if I'd be spending $600,000 on him. But perhaps last week if he had jumped on, he would have been worthwhile. But yeah, keep your eye on it because he could be one of those guys that he's doing that well. You just got to pay the big bucks for him. But keep an eye on him anyway. So.
And another thing too, Fitzy, is remember the Bulldogs. Bontempelli had 15 disposals and scored 113 Supercoach.
This is bullshit. Let me just explain.
15 disposals, 9 of them were contested, but it's...
Get up the stats brought to you by Monty at Fan Footy Gracie. Look at his last quarter here. He had 16 Dream Team and 42 Supercoach. But what did he do? The doggies lost the game. I really don't get that. I mean, all the best, but... I don't get how that even happened. He goes from 70 to 113
7
in three-quarter time. But all of that was in the first
Unless he had a few... Unless his hit-outs to advantage were in the last quarter.
I'm going to watch the last quarter of that game and see what he did. I mean, it's awesome for Supercoach, but I don't know how... someone at Champions Arta they all must have him in their teams. But, fair enough. It's he's looking like he's a must-get in the forward line anyway at this stage. But old mate Luke Dalhouse got tagged out of the game because I had my eye on him as a bit of a point of difference.
Yeah, I think him and Edwards will be similar. They'll sort of start... They probably not... Well, Edwards might be, but Dalhouse probably isn't quite experienced enough to handle a tag.
That's right, not yet. So it just goes to show how easy you can disappear from a game. But another shocking result, Grace, was the GWS Hawks game.
This is good because I hate Hawthorn.
I hate them too, but it's very strange with the result of the game. The GWS hanging on at the end to win, which doesn't often happen. But
Dylan Shield had a big last quarter too.
He got 43 Supercoach or 45 Supercoach.
I was very happy with that. So
a lot of nice tons on the GWS side for anyone who's got any of these players. Ward, Treloar, Devon Smith, who's looking pretty good up forward too. Mummy got 100, Green got 100. Ryan Griffin, if you've still got him, got 107. His role every week must be changing, I reckon, because he sort of goes really bad, doesn't get sided, but then he gets a good scorer next week. So figure that. And old mate Dylan Shield, how many touches did he have there? 27. Look at that. He sure had 22 kicks, 0 handballs for the game. Only 89 Supercoach. He is exactly right. But over on Hawthorn, it wasn't looking amazing. Birchall got 100. And Burgoyne
to tell you the truth, Burgoyne and Mitchell were their 2 best players. I was talking with a Hawthorn supporter today, actually, Fitzy, that he's actually a little bit worried about Hawthorn because they've got Mitchell and Burgoyne, who are their 2 best players, and they're over 30. So
and throw Hodge, Gibson, Lake's injured, all these guys. I'd be very worried if I was...
There's not many, not a lot of the young kids sort of stood up on the week. I mean, Isaac Smith did all right at the start of the game, but he's about 27 he fell away.
Anyway,
but they haven't got a lot of. I mean, Hartung's been sort of running through there, but Brad Hill had a quiet game, so it's very interesting.
It is. What their problem is, though, I'll just cut in there because, you compare it to Geelong or a lot of other teams that play their kids and they leave them in the team. Whereas with Hawthorn, like Anderson play this week, he'll get dropped next week. It'll be 3 weeks before we see him again. They're just not giving the continuity to some of the young guys.
Definitely. So, but it's good for GWS because if they can keep guys like Shield and Treloar and Smith and those guys, if they can keep them around for the next 5 years, I could see them finishing in the top 4 very soon. They'll finish top 8 this year, I think.
Yeah, that's right. The thing with this game in particular, and we've got the stats over here just to... if anyone's wondering what we're looking at, like in this game, Treloar, Ward, and Green all found the touches, and Shield as well. But then you got Whitfield and Cornelio as well, who could easily have got 30 touches, and they probably will next week. So they've just got so many numbers in there, and they can switch and match and bring them in and out. And they're just they're setting themselves up for not just a good year, but a good little era, perhaps that they could be running into. So
no, last thing to point out in that game, Fitzy, Hawthorn's jumpers were freaking shithouse.
White Power Ranger. That's what they look like. The Power
disgusting.
Ranger.
It was like poo brown and a bit of gold and white.
Like the colour of your car.
On to this game, Fitzy, and this is where the big issue comes, or two, is Adam Sard is out this week.
He is, yep.
And then Sloane's gone for 6 weeks.
Sloane is done. Now,
question to you before we get stuck into this game is, what do people do with Sloane?
Well, I've got him on our list to talk about soon. So, we can talk about him now if you'd like to. We can talk about him now. There's not many people on my injuries list. And they're all in this game anyway. So, Sloane, I think they've said 4 to 6. It really depends on the rest of your team. Like, I know your side's got, I think, 5 premium midfielders anyway.
I've got Fife, Pendle, Shield, Sloan and Selwood.
Yeah, so you've got enough there that you can throw Miller on the ground for a few weeks and you're sort of set. But you can have a lot of teams that have got Sloan, they've got Ellis Yolm. I think you've probably...
Yeah, I got Ellis.
You've got him on the bench, but you've got other guys there. But it really depends on your team, I think. Like for if I had Sloan, for example, I've already got Lewis, who's out this week, but he's back next week. So I'd be facing a donut if one of my premiums was Sloan. So it's really going to depend on who else you've got. If you can cover him with, a Miller or even Cracker, I'd be happy to play them.
Just at his price of $5.13,
you've lost all the value in him. That's the real problem. So I mean, look, one way you could look at it is you can trade him out and then trade him back in a couple of weeks for a song basically. But I'd be inclined to keep him if you can. It depends on your team situation. In your case, you've got Cracker and Miller on the bench. You can easily bring in.
I've got Heaney there, but Heaney will most likely possibly go to Tom Mitchell this week.
So you've got options to swing someone in, but it just sort of sucks because a lot of people have had Ablett, they've had Bartel, they've had James Kelly, they've had all these guys that are getting injured. You sort of have to get to a point where you've got to hold them for a little while. So I think with Sloan's case, keeping in mind that he's lost so much value and assuming you've got someone to cover him, I'd hang on, I think.
Yeah.
And Sarge, you've mentioned, I'd be keeping him too. I think his break-even's still rather small because he turned up on the weekend. So if you check that.
-4.
So I'd be inclined to play to just put him on the bench and play McIntosh or Dan McKenzie if you trade him.
He's on my bench anyway. So
there you go. So no worries there. But it was a bit of a sad game for the Gold Coast Suns. I think now we said last week they had 24 players. They've now only got 20 to pick from. So hopefully they get a few guys
said that
up.
Lucky the reserves don't play this week because they have to forfeit. So
it's
not
bad.
Good. So
no,
there's a lot of pressure up there, Fitzy, with Ablett. A lot of people saying Ablett shouldn't be captain. There's some valid points to that, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. The problem is that a guy like Riscatelli, who's making all the movements and that, he's probably not a guy they want to give the captaincy to for the next 5 or 10 years. You'd have to look at a guy like Dion Prestia would probably be the next in line, but what his on-field leadership qualities are like, I'm not really sure. But I think that then they don't really have a very strong leadership group either, so they've got a lot of issues up there. I personally think that Rod Yeed coming in was the worst decision they've made. He's come in with completely the wrong idea. Whether they should have kept Bluey McKenna or gone down the path of the doggies and get someone to regenerate the team rather than someone who's got all their own ideas and we're not going to play finals this year and all that stuff. So I think they've sort of put their foot in a little bit. But
a couple of other guys that from this game, Fitzy, Josh Glenn, 37 after his ton the week before. Had a very average game and he had 7 disposals there. So
and he's done his hammy. He's not playing this week.
Oh, really?
He's done, so you can...
So all those people that jumped on him this week...
Don't worry about him now. Dan McKenzie's the way to go there. But
and
he
then,
did a hammy, so...
Next week we'll have Jake Kelly. He played pretty well.
It's the other one you're thinking of. Jake Lever.
Jake Lever, sorry. So he had, 17 disposals, 10 marks.
Scored
pretty
90.
good. Four contested possessions, so keep an eye on him.
He's a bit more expensive than some other rookies, but... he could be worth downgrading, perhaps McIntosh or someone like
especially
that.
Especially if he continues to put in those sort of games. So.
If he's got the scoring ability, he might be even one you can throw on the field every now and then. So, but a few good scores actually from the Crows. They did beat the Suns quite easily, even though it was a bit of a casual game
41
from
points,
what I saw. So Tex finally had a score above 50 since round 1. So about to have jumped on him. Yenchi had 114. Source is going big score, low score, big score. So he's big score this week. My old mate, poor Brody Smith down there, Grace, he didn't look too good.
He's going to be very cheap.
I'd jump on him. He's obviously not right. I think they should have given him a week off after he got knocked out because he didn't look too good. So, but then again, he had a stinker and he still got 73. I think he got scaled up to 75 Supercoach. So that's pretty good. But I think he'll be fine. He just sort of needs a week off or time to recover from his concussion. But we'll move on to the Saturday night games, Gracie. And the Swans Demons sort of went the way we thought it would. Perhaps not as big a margin, but the Swans are all over them.
Sure were. Obviously, we'll start with the D's. Tommy McDonald. Big one's Christian Salem, Fitzy. I traded him out. I think you did as well.
Everyone did.
His break-even is, I think it's about 20 or something like that for this week. So, unfortunately, you don't expect that. His break-even was, 60 or something like that.
It was. So, you were in the right to trade him out. I don't see a problem with that at all.
Yeah, so.
But do you remember when we did our round 1 show, I told you he was going to get a big score within the first few rounds. It took him a little longer than he thought, but I remember saying that.
Yeah.
So it ended up being the week after we traded him.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But Yeah, I mean, he'll make probably an extra 50k, but that's about it.
He won't keep up that sort of scoring thing. So.
Hogan had another quiet one. Probably almost time to go.
Yep.
Lumumba was sort of up and around there at 86. So, Tommy McDonald, as we said, 123. Just be careful of Tommy McDonald. I know he's on fire at the moment, but it'll be like Alex Rance last year.
I reckon he'll drop off as he goes on.
It's just going to be hard. Like, I know he played on Franklin, and it's a pretty big feat to keep Franklin quiet. So, but
having said that, like, because that's what everyone was praising his efforts against Buddy. Like, because I had traded Buddy in, Buddy still had 22 touches for a key forward. I think he ended up with
no goals.
How many? 6 marks. He didn't kick goal. He kicked 2 points and 1 out on the full, but. Like, he still had a pretty decent game. That's a lot of touches for a key forward. So, like, I think Buddy was leading him up the green. He couldn't sort of stay with him. But it's always a risk trading key defenders into your Supercoach team. The only one I can ever think of having in the past is Brian Lake. The year when he went back-to-back 170s or 190s. So, but I'd be a bit cautious trading him in. But if you've got him now, then keep him. He's probably going to be a keeper, but he probably won't keep up this level of scoring, I think is what you're trying to say.
Definitely so.
On the Sydney side of things, Josh Kennedy finally proved to everyone that, yes, he can score when Tom Mitchell plays. I'm pissed off with that argument. Yeah. Parker finally had a good game.
We had a question coming about Luke Parker, actually. Fitzy. Someone wanted to know whether he can keep up or whether he's out of his form slump now and can sort of keep it up.
Yeah, he's on my list
at the moment.
To talk about. So we can talk about a few of these cheap midfielders.
Luke Parker is about 4. I don't know if you can check his score there. I think
I've got it right here.
480 or something like
Parker
that.
Parker is 486k.
So he's very cheap. Considering what he averaged last year was 108,
I think, 109
close
thereabouts.
To 110. For a bloke that has proven he can average that throughout a season, it's he's very well priced. So it's sort of a difficult one. If you do have Sloan and you have to get rid of him, he could be one you could look at.
Yep.
You just got to look at whether he's going to be in your final midfield at the end of the year. So, I mean, it's hard with all those guys running through that midfield. Heaney's going to come straight back in, obviously, when he's recovered. So, as we saw on the weekend, he was straight in, wasn't the sub. So,
Mitchell's now getting a game. He's one that you should definitely consider as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, his ball. We know he can get the ball, and that it's just. It's going to be difficult whether you bring him. I know 400k is a pretty good price for him.
Well, we can talk about him in just one sec, because my thoughts on Parker is I think people were too strong on him, maybe a bit too keen on him. I don't think he was ever going to be a top 10. You always got to back a guy like Kennedy who's done it in the past. I think Parker got knocked out. Buddy knocked him out in round 2, wasn't it, I think? And since then he's been finding the footy. He just hasn't been getting good Supercoach scores. So I think at 486, he's not a bad option. I'd be more inclined to wait for Rockcliffe, wait for Sloan, and a few other guys. Spend another 50k and get Selwood, for goodness sake. I think that's who I'd be looking at. I think if you've got Parker, then you've obviously held him. You keep him now, but I don't think he's the Sydney midfielder I'd be targeting.
No.
And on Mitchell, I think I'm considering him at the moment because he's only 400 odd k. He's got the dual link. He's very tasty at that price. One thing that concerns me a bit is Longmire said last week, I think it was, that the only reason they haven't been picking him is because of matchups, which makes me a little concerned that maybe when they play a team that's got less midfielders, maybe they'll drop him then bring him in. He doesn't really seem to be a big fan of Mitchell, but I think with this sort of form, he's played himself into their best 22, surely. So
he did say on the weekend. I mean, Longmire said he's played very well, but it's still. Yeah, he still said he's got to keep trying, keep performing to stay in there. So.
Which is great motivation for him to keep performing. And not only that, if he did want to get traded to Victoria or to, because there's a lot of rumours about him going to Carlton and that, he's going to want to play good to get more money out. So
exactly.
I think give him some serious thought. I definitely am this week, and definitely look to trade if you want to trade Hogan out for 100k, you can grab him. So move on to the Sunday games quickly, Grace. So they were. There's one more Saturday night game because we had 6 on.
Because of Mother's Day. So this game was a lot closer than what.
What it suggests.
Well, what it actually was at halftime. Anyway, they were going to. It was going to be a massive blowout. But Goddard only bomber to get over a ton with 135. So Watson and Stanton got pretty close. So, but obviously the usuals for the Dockers. Pav was up there. Neil was up above 130. Fife's 121, so
usual suspects.
All the usual suspects. So look, Lockie Neal's slowly. It's a tough one because he's on fire, but Barlow, Barlow turned up on the weekend, but Barlow's been pretty quiet. So I think because Neil's sort of finding a lot of the footy, Barlow's sort of, still doing his role, but he's not, as damaging as he was last year and previous years.
That's right. It's sort of hard to say because obviously Crowley being out of the team's opened up a new midfield spot, but it's sort of like they've changed the roles around because they don't have one guy as a tagger.
Yeah.
I had Barlow last year. It was really good. This is the sort of stat line he used to get, 25 touches, not a lot of touches, but he'd get 8 or 10 marks in a game because he floats around the wing without much attention. So he doesn't get contested possessions, but he gets a lot of the footy and often kicks a goal or two. So we might discuss him a bit afterwards because I've got his price and maybe what you think about trading him in. But
no worries. And Pav Fitzy is one that
I really want him, to be honest.
458k.
In awesome form. He's trimmed down a bit. He's looking really good. I sort of already got one key forward, so I prefer just to have one in the forward line. But if you wanted a point of difference, he's obviously a bit cheap at the moment because he got knocked out against Melbourne last week or the week before, whatever it was. So, but every other score he's got 3 above 130, I reckon, and then a couple of, I think he's got 80 or 90 in the other game. So that's
I miss
very
out
tasty.
On getting him by about 20,000. So.
But then again, Tom Mitchell's cheaper and probably arguably just as good of an option. So
yeah.
But my mum's got him and she smashed me on the weekend because he got 130 and bullshit. So, but anyway,
on to the Sunday games.
2 Sunday games, Gracie.
Well, this game was a game.
It happened. I don't know if anyone went to it.
No.
Brisbane beat Carlton.
Somehow.
Discussing.
And Carlton have turned even more shit, Fitzy, because their hovercraft fell into the Yarra River today.
It's funny. The worst news of the week. If you couldn't get any worse
to sum Carlton up, I think they've got to trade, get draft picks, high draft picks. They've got to play their kids.
Yep.
Get rid of these guys that are half-hearted. Like I don't rate Andreas Everett.
No, never.
Who else is there, buddy? Thomas was a bit of a waste, I think.
Yeah, but you look at their recruiting, and you can chuck Brock McLean, who retired at the end of last season, into this big pile of guys. It's sort of like if they were in the spot that Sydney were a couple of years ago, they grabbed Jeremy Laidler and all these guys to plug holes, and they won a premiership. Whereas Carlton have been treating their recruiting as if like they're almost at the stage of winning a premiership. So like you're saying, they get Everett, they get McLean and plug holes, but the team's just not good enough to be at that sort of level.
Liam Jones was a waste.
Liam Jones, I absolutely agree.
Trade guys like that and get some kids in and start playing them. Yeah, you're going to have some very bad years, but that means you're going to get more draft picks. Once the kids develop and if they stick around, they've got to go back to that. So
that's right. They need to, because they're just going to keep finishing between 10th and 12th every year unless they properly bottom out and then build again. Dylan Buckley is another guy that either gets subbed out or subbed in every game, and he's one of their only defenders who tries to break the lines, and he should be getting a lot of game time. They just don't play them, and I don't know why. But you could always say that the coach maybe is the wrong move. I think
Malthouse may have possibly. My opinion is he was the wrong decision.
Yep.
But
and I think the Murphy captain was the wrong decision too. He just doesn't have the presence of an on-field leader. It's hard to follow the footsteps of Judd, but you just don't see him as a guy out there that's rallying the troops and getting them all in line. They're a bit of a rabble at the moment. But the headline in the paper said something like, even Carlton loses to the Lions. And you can't take much away from the Lions. They played really well with a team that's sort of not really a team at the moment.
Mind you, Rockcliffe had a big last quarter too.
Did he? I didn't watch.
I reckon he had close to 30 or 40 points.
Yeah.
So he was on about 60, I think, at 3/4 time or something like that.
So had a big last quarter. Stefan Martin had an awesome game.
So it shows that he can play with Leuenberger.
He can play with Leuenberger in the team.
He did have 38 hit-outs.
He did. So he was only rucking against Cam Wood. He had 32, but so looking through their scores, Beams had another. He got 111.
He's probably close to bottoming out too. Dane Beams.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at another, point of difference, 560 is pretty cheap for Dane Beams.
Yeah,
especially
right.
we know he can average 120.
And he's finding his form now with Rockcliffe back in the team. It's going to help balance the load a bit.
Yeah.
Rich had he had a poo game, only got 50, but
probably time to trade him out.
I'll probably hang on to him this week. His break even's only 90, so if he probably he's got that in pretty much every other game. So I'm going to hold him for a week because I've got still Lewis out, Alice Yeoman out, so he'll have to stay and probably become Selwood or something like that next week. But even Zorko only ended up with 48, got completely tagged out of the game by Kurnow. So he completely disappeared. So not good if you've got him up forward. And the last game that finished off a very strange round of upsets.
This is an awesome game. I watched the second half. because we were playing GTA, Fitzy.
Yep, we were.
But I watched the second half and wow, the only person from Port that stood up when Eagles were coming was Robbie Gray. He was running around getting the footy. He had a great start. He kicked 3 goals in the first quarter. So he started off like a house on fire. So, but credit to the Eagles, they've got half of their back line missing. They've got a couple of midfielders like Scott Selwood still out.
Yep.
They're really struggling, player wise for quality.
They've got no backline, you're saying.
And they've still knocked off Port Adelaide side, who were
at home.
Yeah, at home, who were premiership contenders last year. So it was good to see. I thought young guys like Dom Sheed stood up pretty well. So it was good to see.
Yeah, it was good. And Kennedy only kicked 1 goal too, which is interesting. They managed to sort of get a few goals from the midfielders and small forwards.
They play Gold Coast this week.
And that's going to be a very one-sided game because Gold Coast have got no May.
No
Sam Day's buggered his elbow, and the whole back line's done.
Yep.
So, but score-wise, Gracie, Pritis is one guy I'm going to get your opinion on in a minute. He had a 127. Robbie Gray had 143, but there was a few sort of scores in the 110 range. But so not a great result in terms of tipping. Anyway,
I got 5.
Pretty bad this round.
Actually, at work I got 4.
Yeah.
At other competitions I've got 5 because I tipped Geelong. Everywhere else bar work I tipped Collingwood, and I'm like,
terrible.
Why did I do that?
Back your team.
But I don't care. We won. We got the 4 points.
That's it. That's all that matters at the end of the day. But in terms of concerning scores, my mate Pittard only got 60, but Nat Newey only got 77. He looked out of sorts against Ryder and Lovie, sadly. And Callum Sinclair would have taken a fair chunk of the ruckload. Callum had 24 hit-outs and Nick Nat had 30, so that's a very, very bad sign for Nick Nat owners, but stay strong for the time
being, I
think.
So, and Cracker got 66. So
money making. He hasn't been sub. He hasn't been dropped. So I think, and he's going to be on the list for a while. So he's doing his job. Now, Gracie, this week we'll quickly run over. We might talk a bit more about it later in the week, but there's a lot of cheap midfielders coming through at the moment. A lot of them are bottomed out. A lot of them are going to bottom out. But I've got a little bit of a list here. We've talked about a couple, but Barlow and Parker we have mentioned. They're both about 480k. Are you going to jump on either of these guys or let them go?
Probably not. I'm going to let them go.
Yep, let them go. I think I'm probably about the same. Steve Johnson, he's 425k. And I had him last year and he was awesome. So is anyone you're considering at the moment or as a Geelong supporter?
I'd love to, but I'm probably I would tend to go Tom Mitchell because of the forward mid link.
Yep.
Just if Stevie J had forward mid link, I'd jump on him straight away.
Yeah.
Just because you can cover if anyone misses. Like he could be your emergency come finals.
Yep.
That's what I'm hoping Tom Mitchell will be. So But I'd probably go Tom Mitchell just because of the link. So.
No, good call. I've considered him, but because a lot of people are going to trade him in and attempt to have him as their 9th midfielder by the end of the year. So, but I think he's going to miss games through suspension at some stage. He's going to have an injury, so probably unless you're in real dire straits, I probably wouldn't worry about it.
Yep.
His teammate Selwood though, Gracie, I think his break-even this week's about 140. But if you don't have him, he'd be worth getting next week. I'd say he's looking.
They play Sydney this week, so it'll be a very contested game.
Yeah, absolutely.
We know what Selwood's like. So.
That's it. Now Rockcliffe. He's going to be in everyone's team in about a fortnight's time. He's now 494k with a break-even of 199.
Jeez, maybe I should get Rockcliffe this week.
I'd give it a week. You're going to pay about 440k for him next week. So,
good.
but this, like I said, the downside is everyone's going to have him, but I think it's too hard to ignore him. But I think you said that you probably wouldn't be too worried if he didn't get a big score this week. You'd still trade him in. You wouldn't. If he only gets 85 this week, you're still going to get.
Yeah,
on
I think once Brisbane sort of start, playing better football, which they will. I mean, it happened last year. Brisbane didn't win their first game till round 6 last year.
Yeah.
So,
true. Yeah.
It took them a while to get going, and look, they can play good footy. They just got
behind at the moment.
Yeah, play a bit more team footy. So we know Rockcliffe can score big. He's proven it in previous seasons. So
he's worth jumping on just because he averaged 126 last year, 130 or something crazy. So I think you need to get him in, whether he averages that from here on or not. Worst case, he'll probably go 110 from here. I can't see him going much higher than that.
Especially for 440k if he gets to.
Absolutely.
So.
And Pritis is another one, Grace. He's had 2 really good scores back to back. Now, we started the year pretty slow. Only 543k. So if you're looking for a point of difference like he sort of was last year, he might be one to consider.
With Pritis, I think you've just got to realise that he gets more handballs than he does kicks, so not as many points. If he did kick it more, he would be an absolute gun. So
Yep.
Look, he's going to be consistent. Like, you're not going to miss out. He's not going to have a really bad game. Like, he's not going to get a 50 or something like that. He'll be around. If a bad game for him is probably 75.
Yeah, not even that. 85. 85 a bad game. Yep.
But he can go big. He has gone big before. Like, he can go his 140s, 150s. So definitely worth it. So point of difference, sure.
Considering.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's all I've got for you this week.
We've got to mention too, Fitzy, that our mate Sarge. What did he do with his captain choice this week?
He put Jed Anderson as captain by accident.
He was drunk and he forgot to change it, so he had Jed Anderson captain, and he still nearly scored more than me.
He probably scored more than me.
He did score more than you. That. And Friday night he edited our video from the weekend, and he was pissed. So if you've watched it, the audio doesn't quite link up. So
it's like watching a Japanese anime or something.
So that's not our fault. That is his fault.
For
drinking, he has an issue.
Don't drink and edit is the key to the message.
Don't drink and do anything.
No, especially not go to the pub, eh?
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, well, we'll be back on Thursday, I think, Gracie, or maybe Friday, maybe Saturday. Depends.
We'll go Thursday.
See if I can be bothered.
Thursday. So we'll see you then. If you have any questions, tweet us, Facebook us.
Yep, and we'll answer them.
We will answer them. So good luck with your trading, and let's hope no more injury news.
Please. Hooroo.
See you later.